Ukraine is not simply fighting a war. It is enduring inside what military analysts now describe as the most drone-saturated battle space the modern world has ever recorded, a sky so dangerous and so unforgiving that traditional priorities have been overturned completely. Jets, missiles, armored formations, and even infantry all take second place to a single decisive question: can a 50-year-old German mobile cannon keep an entire nation from being swallowed by darkness? When Germany first agreed to send the Gepard system in the year 2022, many observers dismissed the decision outright. They claimed the platform was too slow, too old, too outdated, and too irrelevant for a modern high-intensity conflict. Yet those predictions could not have been more incorrect, because today that very machine, born in the Cold War, has become the most feared low-altitude drone killer of the entire conflict. It is the weapon Russian operators whisper about, the system Ukrainian crews refuse to shut down, and the final barrier standing between millions of civilians and the nightly chaos that Russian forces attempt to impose. This vehicle is not a museum piece. It is a German-designed executioner that drags drones out of the sky and leaves them burning across Ukraine's fields and cities. It is a forgotten relic that rose from storage and became one of the most decisive air defense assets of the war. And to understand why the Gepard carved its name into this conflict, the battlefield must be stripped to its foundations. Russia itself did not expect drones to become its most influential weapon. However, when cruise missiles became scarce, when Russian aircraft were pushed away from Ukrainian airspace, and when offensive momentum collapsed, the Kremlin turned to a new backbone for its terror campaign: Iranian-manufactured Shahed drones. These drones were meant to be cheap, loud, disposable, and launched in massive numbers. They were never designed to reshape an entire war, yet they now define it. Russian forces have launched more than 44,000 drones at Ukrainian targets, an industrial-scale bombardment designed not to win classic military engagements but to break the will of an entire population. Power stations, transformers, grain terminals, hospitals, apartment blocks, and every element that keeps a nation alive have become permanent targets. The strategic logic is brutally simple. Russia overwhelms Ukrainian defenses through quantity rather than sophistication. Each Shahed drone costs Russia roughly $20,000 to $30,000 United States dollars. Shooting down that same drone with a Western-supplied missile can cost between $100,000 and $500,000 United States dollars. That imbalance is not accidental. It is the central pillar of Russia's strategy, a deliberate attempt to bleed Ukraine's air defense networks dry. And the terrifying truth is that this strategy has impact. Ukraine cannot afford to fire $1 million Patriot interceptor every single night. It cannot track every low-flying drone using radars designed originally for ballistic threats. It cannot burn through advanced interceptors faster than Western allies can replace them. The old logic of air defense, the idea that accuracy surpasses volume or that quality overpowers quantity, does not survive inside a drone swarm. Modern warfare has shifted. Precision is no longer king. Mass is. Drones today are not aircraft. They are ammunition. They travel in waves, return in waves, and only require a single gap, a single blind spot, or a single empty launcher to break through. It is exactly at this breaking point, when missiles became too expensive, traditional anti-aircraft guns too slow, and drone saturation too dense, that an old German vehicle suddenly became the most important machine defending Ukraine's sky. That machine was the Gepard, entering the battlefield not as a relic but as the perfect answer to a threat it was never originally built to confront. For most of its existence, the Gepard was never a hero. It was not celebrated, not admired, and not considered relevant to any future battlefield. Born during the height of the Cold War, the system was designed for a singular mission: to protect North Atlantic Treaty Organization armored columns from Soviet helicopters and low-flying aircraft. Its twin 35mm autocannons were terrifying in their era, its radar suite was considered advanced for its time, and its mobility allowed it to keep pace with mechanized forces across Europe. In the 1980s, The Gepard was a monster, a machine built to operate inside a world defined by dense, armored formations and the constant threat of helicopter ambushes. Yet, even monsters age. When the world entered the 2000 era, Germany concluded that the Gepard no longer had a place on the modern battlefield. Jets had become too fast for gun-based interception, missiles had become too precise, unmanned aerial vehicles remained little more than a footnote in military doctrine. The Gepard seemed like a leftover fragment of a past generation. Berlin retired it, packed it away into long-term storage, and shifted towards sleeker missile-focused air defense systems better suited to the perceived future of warfare. For years, analysts referred to the Gepard as impressive but obsolete, a sophisticated museum artifact from an era that no longer existed. That is why Germany's announcement in the year 2022 shocked so many military observers. Out of all the weapons Berlin could have sent to Ukraine, why resurrect this aging dinosaur? The answer lay not in nostalgia but in cold battlefield calculus. For the first time in decades, the threat environment had shifted back toward the very domain the Gepard was built for. Ukraine did not need million-dollar interceptors. It needed volume. It needed constant fire. It needed a platform capable of tracking small, slow-moving, low-altitude targets in real time and tearing them apart with a hail of cheap, accurate 35mm rounds. And when German engineers reopened the Gepard's radar systems and tested them against modern low-signature drone profiles, they realized something astonishing. The radar, despite its age, was nearly perfect for detecting drones. Its older generation search radar, operating at frequencies less vulnerable to electronic warfare interference, could pick up the small, low-reflective shapes of Shahed drones better than many newer digital systems designed primarily for aircraft and missiles. Within weeks, Gepards were pulled from storage depots, refurbished, repainted, recalibrated, and shipped east. Ukrainian crews were rushed into accelerated training programs, learning how to operate a machine older than some of the soldiers standing beside them. Manuals were outdated, parts were mismatched, and the system required a level of hands-on familiarity that younger operators had never experienced. Yet none of that mattered, because once the Gepard began firing at its first incoming Shahed, everything changed. The platform did not win on reputation. It won on mathematics, physics, and raw battlefield efficiency. Each twin 35mm cannon could unleash a near-continuous stream of rounds at velocities aircraft engineers used to describe as mechanically unstoppable. What mattered was not elegance but output. The Gepard offered exactly what the drone war demanded: sustained, affordable, mobile, and brutal firepower. Shots cost hundreds of dollars instead of hundreds of thousands. Engagement cycles lasted seconds instead of minutes. Radar acquisition times were instantaneous. The system that Germany considered obsolete had become the perfect predator for the new age of drone saturation. And as nightly drone waves grew heavier, Ukrainian crews began to realize that the old German beast was not simply relevant, it was becoming indispensable. Because in a war reshaped by unmanned flight, the Gepard was no longer a relic. It was the backbone of Ukraine's low-altitude air defense, the machine that could hold the line when everything else was stretched thin. Part 3. Once the first Shahed drone fell to the Gepard's guns, the nature of the war changed instantly. The Gepard did not dominate because of appearance or modernity, it dominated because of pure mathematical advantage. Its twin 35mm autocannons fired dense streams of kinetic energy rounds at velocities that made interception less a matter of precision and more a matter of overwhelming probability. Ukrainian crews learned quickly that a Shahed drone did not require dozens of expensive missiles or complex radar choreography to destroy. A Shahed could be ripped apart with as few as 7 to 11 rounds, and more commonly with 20 to 30 rounds. Each 35mm round carried a cost of roughly 600 United States dollars. That meant the total engagement cost could be as low as 4,200 United States dollars and rarely exceeded 18,000 United States dollars. When those numbers were compared to the cost of medium-range interceptors priced in the hundreds of thousands, or Patriot interceptors that soared into the millions, The financial logic was undeniable. Intercepting a 100,000 United States dollar Shahed with 4,000 United States dollars of ammunition was not clever budgeting. It was the only sustainable path to survival in a war defined by nightly saturation attacks. The Gepard turned air defense from a financially suicidal mission into a sustainable national strategy. The data did not remain theoretical. Ukrainian crews documented their engagements meticulously. One unit logged 8 downed drones in 6 weeks. Another gunner, identified as Sari, recorded 4 cruise missiles and 28 Shahed drones on his personal tally. Near the Odessa region, a single Gepard shredded 10 Iranian-manufactured drones in a single night. Each of those engagements was a proof of concept. Volume combined with accuracy stops the sky from burning. And then came the headline moments that silenced even the harshest skeptics. Verified battlefield footage and after-action reports confirmed that Gepards had intercepted not only Shahed drones, but also higher-value threats, including a Kh-101 cruise missile approaching a critical power plant. Against all expectations, a gun-based system designed 5 decades earlier could, at the edge of its performance envelope, neutralize threats that Western militaries believed only advanced missile systems could handle. Those engagements forced Russian planners to adapt. The simple, cheap, infinite drone wave was no longer an automatic path to success. A cost-effective counter existed. The Gepard was breaking the Kremlin's cost asymmetry advantage. For Ukraine, each successful interception did more than save ammunition. It bought time, protected infrastructure, and preserved the integrity of the national energy network. But shooting drones is only half of the story. The deeper impact lies in what the Gepard protects when it opens fire. Ukraine's power grid is not just infrastructure, it is the heart of the country. When it fails, everything fails. Hospitals, water systems, communication networks, industrial production, even the fundamental ability of households to survive winter all collapse if the electrical grid collapses. This is why Russian doctrine places relentless pressure on power plants, substations, and transmission lines. Every Shahed that slips through Ukraine's defenses is not merely a perforation in the sky. It is a blackout waiting to happen. This is where the Gepard's mobility becomes decisive. Unlike missile batteries that are fixed or require lengthy setup times, the Gepard maneuvers like a frontline combat vehicle. It can race to a vulnerable transformer station, position beside a high-voltage substation, or guard a thermal power plant that cannot afford even a single strike. When Russia launches its characteristic night swarms, Gepard crews do not wait passively. They reposition dynamically, reading the threat, scanning low-altitude radar signatures, and establishing overlapping kill zones wherever the danger is heaviest. In this war, mobility is life. Gepard placed at the right node at the right minute means entire districts remain lit, while others would have fallen into freezing darkness. And as winter tightened its grip and energy demand climbed, the Gepard became more than a weapon. It became the physical embodiment of survival. In cities like Kyiv, Kharkiv, and Odessa, civilians say the same simple sentence, "If the Gepard is firing, we are safe." In that moment, the thunder of the 35mm cannons becomes more than noise. It becomes reassurance, defiance, and the sound of a nation refusing to fade into blackout. The Gepard's effect on the battlefield grew even more apparent during the darkest nights of the war, when Russia attempted to overwhelm Ukraine's entire energy network with coordinated mass strikes. These assaults were not random. Russian planners built them as layered attack packages combining Shahed drones, cruise missiles, and glide bombs launched in synchronized waves meant to saturate every branch of Ukraine's air defense hierarchy. The logic was simple but devastating. Force Ukraine to expend its most advanced interceptors, exhaust radar tracking channels, and overload command and control networks until a gap opened somewhere within the layered shield, yet the Gepard repeatedly denied that opening. Its role was not at the top of the air defense pyramid, but at the bottom, the foundational layer upon which everything else depended. Air defense is not a single system. It is a series of interlocking rings that must function in perfect harmony. At the highest tier sit the prestigious systems such as Patriot, Iris-T, and SAM-PT. They intercept ballistic threats, sophisticated cruise missiles, and high-speed aircraft. These systems make headlines, but their effectiveness collapses the moment the lower tiers fail. Those higher-tier systems cannot afford to expend million-dollar interceptors on drones costing a fraction of that price. They cannot remain on high alert 24 hours a day, scanning for slow and low targets with tiny radar signatures. They cannot maintain readiness if they are forced to fight endless swarms alone. Their launchers are few, their reload cycles are long, their maintenance requirements are heavy. If forced into nightly drone attrition, they would burn out within weeks. This is the reason the Gepard became irreplaceable. The Gepard eats the low-altitude chaos so that the high-altitude guardians can breathe. Every drone destroyed by the twin 35mm cannons is an interceptor that Patriot does not have to fire, a detection channel that Iris-T does not have to waste, and a tracking cycle that NAS-AMS does not have to dedicate. By clearing the lowest layer of the sky, the Gepard shields the upper layers from collapse. This cooperative balance is what allowed Ukraine to achieve one of the most important statistics of the entire conflict: a 74% interception rate against one of the largest aerial bombardment campaigns in modern military history. That number is not just an abstract percentage. It is the difference between a city standing or burning, and nowhere was this synergy more clearly proven than during the massive Russian attack of the year 2025, the largest airstrike of the war. In a single night, Russian forces launched 705 munitions, cruise missiles, ballistic rounds, glide bombs, and waves of Shahed drones. This attack was engineered to break the Ukrainian grid. Instead, nearly the entire wave was intercepted. Gepards accounted for dozens of kills across multiple regions, each one preventing cascading failures inside the power network. Every Shahed that died under the 35mm barrage was one less explosion inside a transformer yard, one less severed transmission line, one less city plunged into freezing darkness. The aftermath of that night proved a truth often ignored in military theory. Advanced systems survive only if the humble systems beneath them hold firm. And yet, even as the Gepard's battlefield value became undeniable, it faced an enemy it could not shoot down. That enemy was the international politics surrounding its ammunition. The Gepard's lethality comes not only from its cannons, but from the 35mm rounds that tear drones apart. Ukraine quickly encountered a crisis that no commander could solve through tactics alone. The world simply did not manufacture enough ammunition. The original supplier was Switzerland, a nation bound by strict neutrality laws. Under those laws, Switzerland blocked all re-export requests of Gepard ammunition. This meant Ukraine's most cost-effective air defense platform was being starved not by the Kremlin, but by a country trying to avoid involvement in the war. What followed was a race against time. Germany realized that without immediate industrial action, the Gepard would go silent. In response, Rheinmetall was pushed into a wartime sprint to restart an ammunition production line that had been dormant for decades. Engineers unearthed old blueprints, retooled factories, built new supply chains, and tested prototypes under extreme deadlines. What should have been a multi-year process was compressed into months. The reason was simple: without ammunition, the Gepard could not save the night. Restarting ammunition production for the Gepard was only the beginning, because Ukraine's consumption rate did not merely stretch industrial capacity, it shattered it. A single Gepard battery, operating through a period of heavy Russian bombardment, could expend between 4,000 and 6,000 35mm rounds in a single month. During the most intense nights, operators reported firing several hundred rounds in only a few minutes as multiple Shahed drones attempted to penetrate the same air corridor. Multiply that consumption across dozens of Gepard units deployed nationwide, and the mathematical reality became brutal. Ukraine required tens of thousands of rounds every month simply to maintain the ability to fight through Russia's drone output. By the year 2025, Germany was forced to elevate, allowing the jet to down several targets before disengaging safely. But the price emerged just as quickly. Nowotny himself was killed in a Mi-262 incident, a combination of technical malfunction, inexperience with jet dynamics, and crushing tactical pressure that converged within a few fatal minutes. By early 1945, Jagdgeschwader 7, the first operational jet fighter wing, was formed, soon followed by Jagdverband 44 under General Adolf Galland, who handpicked the most seasoned Luftwaffe pilots left. In one of the unit's most famous battles, roughly 37 Mi-262s charged into a massive formation of more than 1,000 Allied bombers and more than 600 escort fighters. They shot down around 10 bombers and 1 fighter while losing only 3 jets. On paper, a kill ratio of roughly 4-to-1 was extraordinary. But war is never a classroom exercise. The Mi-262 quickly revealed a fatal weakness: takeoff and landing. Jet engines required long acceleration runs, and at low speeds just after lifting off or moments before touchdown, the aircraft became an easy target for P-51s or P-47s waiting in ambush around airfields. Many Mi-262 pilots were shot down before retracting their landing gear or during approach with throttles reduced and no ability to spool up fast enough to evade. The Allies soon realized that the most effective way to counter the Ghost jet was not to chase it in the sky, but to catch it at its weakest link, the runway. In total, approximately 1,300 to 1,400 Mi-262s were produced. Yet fewer than 300 ever entered combat in reasonably complete units, and rarely were more than 100 jets combat ready at the same time. Estimates suggest the aircraft shot down between 300 and 450 Allied aircraft, while around 100 Mi-262s were lost in aerial combat, with many more destroyed on the ground. Viewed coldly, the exchange rate was excellent for a brand new platform. But in the grand context of tens of thousands of Allied aircraft over Europe, the Mi-262 was simply too few to change the tempo of bombing operations. Each downed B-17 meant 10 airmen who did not return home and hundreds of bombs that did not fall that night. But overall, the skies remained thick with bombers. Allied aircrews had mixed emotions about the Mi-262. They scoffed at its engine fragility, short lifespan, and the Luftwaffe's shortage of properly trained pilots. Yet they also admitted to a sense of helplessness when a jet screamed past like an arrow, unleashed a burst, and vanished beyond reach. For crews aboard the B-17 or B-24, the called jets in the area instantly tightened the atmosphere inside the fuselage. Machine guns could still track a looping Bf-109, but they were nearly useless against a target superior in both speed and altitude. Inside the Luftwaffe, attitudes toward the Mi-262 were equally conflicted. Veteran pilots with sufficient training time and proper technical support praised it as the weapon of the future. Blisteringly fast, brutally armed, and offering higher survivability if used correctly. But many younger pilots saw it as a double-edged blade. A single mistake in throttle control, landing timing, or speed judgment could be fatal even without enemy contact. In the final phase of the war, as the Mi-262 units under Galland, Steinhoff, Barkhorn, and others flew desperate interception missions under skies glowing with exploding bombs, one feeling dominated: a weapon of the next era thrown into a war already lost. They knew the Mi-262 could not reverse Germany's collapse, but every bomber shot down meant fewer bombs raining on German cities that night. In those brief, violent seconds between bomber formations and escort gunfire, the Mi-262 became the symbol of a last-gasp technological gamble in a collapsing world. And on the strategic level, what did all of this truly achieve, and more importantly, how did it force the world after the war to rethink the very foundations of air power? Imagine yourself as a United States Army Air Forces officer in the year 1944, sitting in a briefing room as the first intelligence report on the Mi-262 is laid on the table. Germany's new fighter reaches approximately 870 kilometers per hour, about 150 kilometers per hour faster than our P-51. Your first question would not be, can it save Berlin? It would be, if the next war breaks out, which side pays the price for falling behind in jet technology? Strategically, the Mi-262 could not rescue Germany from defeat. It arrived too late in too few numbers with too fragile a support system. Yet the existence of a fighter capable of roughly 870 kilometers per hour, far beyond the reach of any Allied piston aircraft, delivered an unmistakable message. The era of piston engines in high-end air combat was over. No Air Force would ever again accept maximum speeds in the 400-500 km per hour range as competitive. Had it appeared earlier, in sufficient numbers, with stronger airfield protection and consistent logistics, the Mi-262 could have forced the Allied bombing campaign to pay a much higher price, possibly prolonging the European war or compelling changes in Allied strategy. But in reality, its technological advantage was neutralized by non-technical failures. Adolf Hitler's political interference, forcing priority toward a fast fighter bomber, delays in mass production decisions, Allied bombing campaigns targeting Me-262 and Jumo-004 factories, and chronic shortages of fuel and veteran pilots. For the Allies, the Me-262 was a strategic alarm bell. After the war, Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union all shipped captured Me-262s home for detailed testing. Flight trials confirmed the jet could reach roughly 540 miles per hour at around 20,000 feet, solid proof that air superiority in the future required jet propulsion. From that point on, new designs emerged. The F-80 Shooting Star, the MiG-15, the Gloucester Meteor, all carried design cues, aerodynamic lessons, or engine insights that traced directly back to the German jet. Post-war air combat doctrine also shifted. Before the Me-262, the dominant mindset emphasized close-range dogfighting, turning circles, altitude changes, cutting angles. Speed was important, but not decisive. After the Me-262, high-speed hit-and-run tactics became the new standard for jet fighters. Rapid approach, a firing window measured in seconds, and immediate disengagement once conditions deteriorated. With the later integration of onboard radar and air-to-air missiles, this philosophy evolved into what we now call beyond visual range warfare. On the global military balance, the Me-262 helped trigger the early Cold War jet race. The Soviet Union leveraged captured data, engineers, and factories to shorten its technological learning curve. Britain and the United States drew deep lessons on material limits, engine reliability, and critically, the absolute necessity of a robust logistical ecosystem to support immature technologies in wartime. Yet the Me-262 also became a textbook example of a broader phenomenon: high technology, low strategy, a platform of extraordinary sophistication deployed inside a strategic and logistical structure incapable of sustaining it. Many analysts later asked whether, given Germany's situation in the year 1944, a simpler, cheaper design such as the single-engine P-162 might have been more appropriate. Debate continues, but the Me-262 stands as a clear warning. Technology placed into the wrong strategic context can become a burden rather than an advantage. And those contradictions lead us to the final question. What legacy did the Me-262 leave for future generations, and which of its lessons still matter just as much today? If you stand today at a modern air show watching an F-35, a Su-57, or a J-20 rise into the sky, it is easy to forget that everything began with a crude, temperamental jet whose engines caught fire and whose lifespan was measured in mere dozens of flight hours, the Me-262. In terms of pure combat capability, it was obsolete only a few years after the war, quickly eclipsed by new generations of fighters with stronger engines, deeper wing sweep, heat-resistant materials, and integrated radar. But conceptually, the Me-262 was the first brick laid in the foundation of a skyscraper. Ideas such as speed is armor, high-speed interception, concentrating all firepower in the nose to maximize firing time, and using rockets and later missiles to break bomber formations all existed in embryonic form in the Me-262. Some upgrade pathways were already imagined late in the war: deeper swept wings, more powerful engines, even ejection seats and nose-mounted radar. These improvements never matured on the Me-262 itself, but they appeared in full in the jet fighters developed after the war by multiple nations. Today, the Me-262 lives on mostly as a historical symbol in a functioning laboratory of wartime engineering. A few replicas equipped with modern civilian jet engines still fly in air shows, reminding onlookers how narrow the line can be between cutting-edge weapon and last desperate gamble. Restoration and reconstruction programs allow engineers and military historians to better understand the pressure placed on the designers of the Me-262 to push an unripe technology onto a battlefield already in flames. Evaluated as a whole, the strengths of the Me-262 rested on three pillars: its unmatched speed against piston fighters, its concentrated firepower optimized to destroy heavy bombers in seconds, and its pioneering role in launching the jet fighter era. Its weaknesses were equally clear: unreliable engines, complex and costly logistics, dependence on pristine runways, vulnerability during takeoff and landing, and above all, its late arrival, entering the war at a moment when strategy, industry, and the overall balance of power were already fixed. In a hypothetical alternate timeline, one with longer preparation, stronger industrial backing, and a coherent deployment strategy, the Me-262 could have been an even more monumental milestone in air combat history. But history allows no what if. The Me-262 did not save Germany from defeat, but it forced the world to redesign the future of the fighter aircraft. Its story echoes a very modern lesson. A nation may pull ahead of the world in technology, yet still fail if it cannot synchronize strategy, logistics, manpower, and timing. Today, as great powers race forward with stealth aircraft, hypersonic weapons, and artificial intelligence-driven systems, the central question remains exactly what it was in the era of the Me-262. Do you truly control the entire ecosystem around your weapon? Because if you do not, even the fastest machine in the sky can become nothing more than a razor-sharp arrow launched far too late.